Boy, I'm getting pretty passionate here. You better send me home. I could get in serious trouble. We can keep reinventing ourselves. My mentor is 95, and she's headed off to the UN for Environment Week. It's the first time I've told that story. Somebody was prepared to witness those things for us.
Kathy,
Yes.
the many lives of Kathy Eldon. I'm so excited about this chat, and I would love to just jump straight into it, if that's okay with you. You are a highly trained journalist.
Nope. I'm faking it all the way.
That's what the good ones say, though.
Yeah, but training implies that you went to journalism school, maybe, and I've learned on the job. So sorry to refute your entire beginning.
It's fine. It's almost
You'll have to start all over again.
No, I'm going to leave this in.
Good.
You have written 17 books, I think, at this stage.
Yep, some of them were very little.
17. And you've also been a producer on some incredible films.
Thank you. I'll hold on to that one. Thank you.
I feel, looking at your body of work, that you are a master of creating these stories that are about giving collective courage and not just finding big issues that we need to talk about that need to be given some light, but finding a way where they land on some action that someone can actually do. How early in your career did you realize that the work that you could do could have that type of impact?
I was so lucky because I landed in Kenya, Nairobi, Kenya, at a time about 15 years after independence, when everybody was trying to transform ideas into action. And I talked my way into working for the local English language newspaper, which is the largest newspaper in Kenya, The Nation. And they said, okay, whatever, go do stuff. And I wrote about the most creative, active people who were all around me, people who were had something they needed to make happen, and they did it in whatever way they could manage. Sometimes it was even legal, But I found that if I wrote about those people, and it was in the newspaper, that people wanted to do something. They got behind it, they bought their products, they supported their foundations, they made things happen. So it became my desire to be the person who could really mobilize people around an idea or a possible action. And it carried out through my whole career.
It's such a big point, closing that gap, like one, being a storyteller, but two, creating something that people can do and really making the most out of the effort that you put into getting that story out.
For sure.
I've been exploring this distinction lately with storytelling and just the way that we absorb information, which is either being a spectator on the sidelines or being a witness. I feel like being a witness to a story helps us almost want to uphold the truth in a situation versus being a spectator. How important is that with the work that you do?
Well, I think you brought up something that's really critical. And I think a lot of us right now, or I'll speak for myself, I find we get the newspaper every day. We get the New York Times every day of our lives. And as a journalist, I feel it's really important to support journalism in whatever form. But it's really hard to witness or observe what is happening in the world around us. But if I turn away, that feels like I'm betraying those people who are being pictured or their stories are being told. But honestly, it is one thing to be a spectator and a witness. And it is another thing to say, you know what, I don't like what's happening. And I want to do something myself to make things better. And obviously we can't, about every single issue, roll up sleeves and make things better. But I think we can choose the issues that really matter to us, and we can try to make a difference in those issues and not just be a spectator and not just be a witness.
Yeah, really choosing something to go after. I think that is the key of it, because we can't do everything.
Can't do everything, no.
But we
can do something.
We can do something.
Yeah.
How do we get better as storytellers with dignity-first storytelling? And when I say that, I mean really having respect for the subject rather than exploiting an issue or a person or a place. Like, it seems like a fine line in a craft, but where does that sit for you?
Yeah, I learned a lot about that when my son Dan, who had trailed along behind me as I was a young journalist in Kenya, I think he was very intrigued by the power of story as well. And he actually went to Somalia at the age of 21 when he was a student at UCLA because he heard there might be a famine in Somalia. And he went together with his friend Aidan Hartley, who was with Reuters, and took photographs of really hundreds of people who were starving to death. And he said the worst things I could not photograph. You know, they were just, he saw people being loaded into the back of trucks like sticks of wood, you know, bodies. But the worst things he couldn't photograph. But he found it very difficult because those things that he didn't photograph, had he been able to photograph them, they might have mobilized people even more. But I think it's for the individual who is the communicator of whatever it is to figure out in himself or herself or their self what it is that is necessary to be communicated in order to elicit that response. You know, we also have to remember that you can't show everything because people simply can't cope with it. And we've had a number of films under Creative Visions that one was about the effect of war on children. Nobody can watch it, you know? So it's not even about their dignity, it's that we can't cope with it ourselves as observers.
That's such a good point. I find I didn't realize until spending a little bit of time in Africa myself how sanitized our news is here. Because you would see the horror on the front page. They don't hold back. Like if there is something that's
Car crash, whatever.
You see everything.
Yeah.
But in here we don't. Is there a middle ground between that sanitization?
Well, I think that journalists or the editors know that they're not going to sell papers if it is so grotesque. I guess the internet, you can see, you know, things in true horror. But I think editors wisely know when to draw the line, and I think they do find the middle ground most likely.
That makes sense. I have a quote that I'm going to read, and then I would love to talk to you about this. To explore the unknown and the unfamiliar, distant and near, to record in detail with the eyes of a child any beauty, horror, irony, traces of utopia and hell. Select your team with care, but when in doubt, take on some new crew. But avoid at all costs fluctuations of sincerity with your best people.
I recognize that quote.
It's pretty powerful.
Would you like to know where it came from?
Yes.
Okay. When Dan was 19, he had the previous summer driven an old Land Rover, ancient Land Rover, with two friends from Kenya to South Africa at the age of 18, sort of barely, 17, 18. And along the way, he had discovered a refugee camp where there were 15,000 people who didn't have any wells. And so the women were carrying water on their heads for 4 miles a day or, 4 hours a day to bring water back to the refugee camp. Thought, this is not a good thing. He took pictures of it, but he thought this needs to change. And Dan decided to do something about it, to roll up sleeves. So he invited 14 of his friends, including Christopher Nolan, who was then a 19-year-old kid with a camera, who became the cameraman, to travel across 4 war-torn countries in Africa to bring aid to a refugee camp, that refugee camp. And along the way, there were love triangles, there were all kinds of things that happened, but they managed to deliver aid to that refugee camp. They built 2 wells, they had blankets, they had tools. Dan wanted to help people help themselves. He did not want to just like top down. He was like, we want you to be able to help yourself. So along the way, Dan was a very, very, loved his journals, and he wrote this mission statement for safari as a way of life. And it was a mission statement for this trip, to explore the known and unknown, the distant and familiar, to see with the eyes of child all traces of horror, utopia, and hell. And the extra bit is when there are fluctuations of sincerity among your best people, bring on a new crew. He was grappling with a lot of stuff going on, and with the kids on safari. but it's pretty amazing for a 19-year-old, I guess.
It is mind-blowing. I think it's way more than pretty amazing if I think about how old I was at 16 and 17. I was thinking about how to drive to the nearest beach for New Year's Eve and how we're all going to get there for a party. Meanwhile, Dan is doing a safari, extremely meaningful. It is mind-blowing. When I read those words, it's just so powerful. There's so much in there. Can you tell us a little bit more about Dan's journey?
Well, Dan's journey through his life, he was a kid. He was an ordinary kid, but I think he had an extraordinary view of the world and his role in the world. And that, I think, came from being brought up in Kenya, where there weren't social services. So if you needed to have something done, you kind of had to figure it out. You had to make it happen. And when he was a 13, 14-year-old, a friend of his needed a heart operation. And he rallied the troops to raise $5,000 to get her that operation. And he learned, like, oh my God, this is fantastic. He took on a family next, a Maasai family. The mother made Maasai jewelry. And he actually sold the jewelry so that she could get school fees for her kids. When he was 19, he led the group across Africa. That was like, he went from an individual to a family to a community. And when he was 21, he took on a country, which is when the famine was happening in Somalia. But it honestly, for the lesson for all of us is that you start wherever, but you never know where you're going to end up, you know?
Yeah. And we lost Dan, tragically. Are you okay about telling us a little bit more about that?
Sure. He was so excited by the power of his stories to mobilize action that he returned to Somalia after the story blew up. Aid mission happened, everybody flowed into Africa, and he stayed on for the next year. He didn't go back to UCLA, he stayed there. And it got tougher and tougher. The country swirled into a civil war. And I think it was my birthday, June 26th in 1993. I called Dan, because his work was everywhere, center spread of Newsweek and Time. But I knew how dangerous it was. And I said, Dan, don't you think it's time to leave? And he said, Mom, don't ask me to go. The story continues. And I found out later that his boss had said, please just stay 2 more weeks, because he'd asked to leave. He knew in his heart. He said, please don't ask me to leave. And that was when, deep breath, I said, okay, Dan, you're living the life of your choice, and I'm so proud of you. And he said, I love you so much. I'm sending you a ticket to Nairobi. And I said, no, I'm sending you a ticket to LA. You know, we were kind of battling. But 2 weeks later, there was a terrible bombing by the United Nations forces of a house where a warlord was hiding, and he wasn't there. They were having a peace meeting, and they killed 80 people, wounded another 200. And Dan and his friends were called to go take pictures of, be witness to what had happened. They went, 5 of them, and the people were so enraged, that collateral damage. The people were so enraged that they beat, stoned, and shot the 4 journalists to death. And that was my, okay, I am going to try to transform this horror into a positive force for good. And I said those words to the head of Reuters, and thus began a campaign around creating awareness of what these journalists go through. 200 journalists have been killed in Gaza. Thousands of journalists have been killed over the last, 10 years since Dan was killed. That was many, many years ago. But we have to be aware of those who are witnessing and sharing the information with us. And I think then we feel the obligation to do something because somebody was prepared to witness those things for us.
It makes me think about so much to your point, which doesn't get surfaced enough, is the danger that these journalists are undertaking to get us the real stories and the weight of it on them. Yeah. And how the welfare of them carrying that weight of what they've seen.
Yeah. Many, really, truly, many are screwed up. I've seen many are screwed up photojournalists, and many of them don't last long. It's often a young man's or young person's, not men, young person's mission. And now everybody can be a citizen journalist. We all have our little cell phones with us. We can all be witnesses.
Love that. On that, I would love to reveal your object.
Oh, God, is that it?
Surprise. Would you like to do the honors?
I feel, this is exciting. I'm just so excited for you to see this.
Looks fantastic.
What do you think it is?
I I'm going to say it's a compass, but I have no idea where it is from or what its origin of, or the story around it, but dive us into it.
Okay, well, it's a mariner's compass, and it's very old, and it's something that Dan gave me. And I don't know what, I don't think he wore it around his neck, but hold it, it's really heavy. And I don't know if it's like 19th century, but it's a brass old mariner's compass. And for me, it was such a treat to get that from him because he was always going on safari. And he used to, I don't think he used that specifically, but he liked to go on adventures. And you always need a compass if you're going on an adventure.
Yeah. The weight of it as well. I think that's got such significance. It's just beautiful. And I love, what was the moment that he gave it to you in?
I think he'd come back from one of his latest trips. He'd traveled to 45 countries, by the age of 22 when he was killed. But this is, I think, important to me because I think for each one of us, we do have an inner compass. And we don't always realize that that compass exists. But if we are quiet and we listen inside, we can often hear what direction we're supposed to be headed. And maybe if we have a physical symbol or a reminder that compass can lead us where we're meant to go, our inner compass.
I love that so much. And Dan will be pretty happy that it has carried on this long and being the core of so much of your work as you've gone forward. When I think about the work that Dan did so early, which is absolutely mind-blowing, and what you've done throughout your lifetime, it feels like there is this topic called moral imagination.
I love that.
And how the work that Dan did and that you still continue to do really helps us expand our moral imagination. It just feels really important to look at different perspectives, to think about things, even like journalist welfare and these horrific stories that are still happening now. I find this term feels like such a perfect fit for all the work that you've done and the impact that it can have. Is there a piece of work that you have worked on that you feel, I think all of them have done that, but something in particular that really lands for you in this expanding our moral imagination?
Thank you for asking that. I really reflect on the crazy variety of things that I've done, everything from kids' books to just a huge variety of mediums and also subjects. And I have to say, and this is not meant to be a plug, but maybe it will come out across like that. But recently I went through the fires in Malibu, and we were in evacuation mode for 6 months, living in a ground floor, basement, whatever, beautiful. But we were out of our home for 6 months, and we had a home to go back to. But during that time, I think a book idea came through, and it's called Boundless. And it's a roadmap to a limitless future. And I produced this book with an incredible team. I say it's by Cathy Eldon and her noisy spirits, because I don't claim this wisdom and knowledge that's come through. I feel like we all have our muse, our source, God, whatever we want to call that energy that maybe surrounds us and can inspire us. Yeah. And it is the synthesis of everything I've learned in all these years of doing and being and meeting so many extraordinary people. So I would say that's it. And the crazy thing is, and I'm kind of excited about it, but the very last chapter is, I can't give you a roadmap. I have no idea what your roadmap should be, but I can give you a compass. And we created something called the Spark Compass, which is SPARK. And the S is for what's your story? What's the story you want? Not the story that you were given or the story that your parents told you. What's your story now? What's your purpose? That's the East. What's your purpose? What's your purpose now? Might just be for the next year or 5 months or 6 months, but what's your purpose? The A is, what's the adventure you want to be part of this heading wherever you're going? How are you going to be resilient in it? And the last one, which is the most important, I think, is the kindness and compassion and creativity, the co-words. But so it's SPARK. And I want to make that to remind us that we all have that compass inside us.
I love that.
Oh, thank you. It's the first time I've told that story.
It's so strong, and I love how you point out, like, what is your story now? Because we do attach so much to where we've come from, what we've done, what people have told us, but constantly asking yourself, no, I get to choose kind of now. You are a very humble person with the amount of work and impact that you have done. And where is it now? I know that Dan's journals did incredible exhibitions. That's how I ended up in a long story, ended up finding and meeting you through a good friend, Tom. You did all that, you brought to life his incredible scrapbooks, and again, the depth and meaning that Dan brought to these were beautiful. But then you went on to create whole foundations that now fund these huge educational, creative things for youth, for youth and for adults and for film. Like, can you give us an overview of where you're at now?
Yeah, thank you. And thank you for reminding me about the way we met. Dan really mobilized a generation of young creatives back in the 80s, 90s, and early turn of the century. Gosh, I'm going to revisit that now, but looking at the contemporary ways that Dan can mobilize people, light sparks in people, because that's what he does, fires. Right now, Creative Visions Foundation invite everybody to climb on board, but we have Impact Media, anybody who needs a fiscal sponsorship. We have over 300 projects and productions, outstanding projects and productions, and some very simple. But Navalny was one of our projects. And then we have Impact Media, Education. And we have been chosen as the best in the world of creative expression in young people. And young people is where it's at. So we have the ability to give away money every year and to mobilize kids. You know, we had 100,000 entries last year of creative expression around peace. This next year, it's going to be unique but united. We each are unique, but when we come together, nothing can stop us. And right now, we have to stop othering other people. You know, we are one. We have to come together in an environment that can be very hostile and threatening and exude love and connection. And that's not being Pollyanna. It's the only way we're going to get where we need to get.
Amazing. Pretty powerful stuff, Kathy. On that note, with new storytellers coming into the scenes, there are so many new tools to use these days as well. And to your point, there's more accessibility to make your story however you want.
Yes.
With your experience and what you've seen covered in the social environment and where we're kind of heading, are there any major topics that you'd love to see given a light by new storytellers over the next decade?
Okay, I'm going to say whatever mobilizes you, whatever drives you, whatever fuels that creative spark that you have inside you is what you go for. I am privileged to oversee hundreds of projects and productions, 99% of which I never would have thought of. But they are important, they're compelling, and if you're prepared to put your life behind it, you go for it. But do it to bring us together, not tear us apart.
Yeah. I think that's the thing is you've got to put your heart on the line for the story because you can really feel when someone's half in.
Yep.
And you can feel when they're like, no, they truly chose this out of passion and they're going after it. Those are two different, it almost feels like they're two different outcomes of what you're going to put into the world as well.
And look, we all have to work for a living. You know, the bread and butter, I was just talking to a young writer and he said, right, I'm going to go write. And he's working in a bookshop. I said, stay in the bookshop, get up at 5 in, you know, and write from 5 to 9, because you're not going to write from 8 to 6, you know, that's not going to happen. So, you know, it's okay. You can work for a living, get your insurance, and do whatever it is that's going to mobilize you on the side until it can take over.
I found that with a couple of the guests that we've interviewed is their life is of extremes, where there's a career or a job title that they have, which is really important to them, but it might be a very head-only job and quite complex and cognitive. And then the pendulum swings where there are these incredible artists on the other side, like portrait painters and incredible yoga teachers, but they've got both things in their lives, to your point, because we need to make a living. We still want to be excited about it, but we also need our creative arts to be a huge part of who we are.
And we're not, you know, joining a corporation at the age of 18 and dying after 65 years with a pension. You know, we can keep reinventing ourselves. We can keep finding our own inner compass and redesigning our lives so that we have passion and energy and joy and excitement right to the end of our lives. My mentor is 95, and she's headed off to the UN for Environment Week, you know. I couldn't be more excited to be with her as she reinvents herself.
Okay. Kathy, what do you think we attach too much meaning to?
I agree. I think the what's bringing us down right now, whether just like on this greed, corporate greed. Right now, we need to focus on our environment. We need to focus on things that bring us together, that fuel education, that fuel health, that fuel the humanity, the arts, the culture. And big corporate political greed is taking over and eliminating that which makes us truly human. And I think that we are headed down a very slippery slope unless we absolutely stand up for that which makes us human, which is the love, the kindness, our creative spark. That's what we need to nurture. Boy, I'm getting pretty passionate here. You better send me home. I could get in serious trouble.
On that note, then I'll keep digging a little further. What do you think we're not going to get right in this lifetime?
In this lifetime? I think we have the possibility of getting everything right. I think I'm not going to say what we won't get right, because I think we have to be aspiring towards getting it right. And I cannot give up. I had to go on a sojourn this summer to refuel myself, because I was very burdened by the weight of the world, by what's going on in Ukraine, what's going on in Gaza, what's going on in downtown Los Angeles, what's going on in front of all of us, what we were witnessing. And I felt very just heavy. And it was like, okay, I'm just gonna, have a good time. Apathy is our gravest danger, I think. And I think now, having taken care of myself, I went back to Iowa, so I'm from Iowa. I had corn, Dairy Queen. But fueling yourself so that you can grapple with this stuff again. Yeah. And you will not stand back. We will not be witnesses. We will not be observers. We will be participants in getting it right. Damn it.
Yes to that.
You didn't know what you were going to get. You're fueling me today.
I love it. I love it all. Kathy, we are going to put this fantastic object of Dan's, we're going to do a 3D scan of this and photography and add it to the growing exhibition.
He's honored, and he's a very noisy spirit. Oh. He will be spreading the word in all celestial areas and beyond.
Yes. We'll be adding your story alongside it as well, but are there any other words of wisdom that you'd like to leave for generations to come?
I would say, guys, put down the devices. I'm speaking to myself. And really listen inside, because you know what you want to do. You know what you need to do. You know what is compelling you to move forward, to take action for yourself and also for others. So listen inside. That's the main thing. And then go for it, man. What have you got to flipping lose? Just do it.
Yeah. Thank you so much. You're a total inspiration, and it's been an absolute delight having you
You'll
here.
be doing a lot of cutting on this interview.
Thank you, Kathy.
Thank you. I'm Kathy Eldon, and I am a creative activist. This is my object for the Museum of Thought. It's a compass, and I hope it reminds everybody that we hold our compass within ourselves, and we go in the direction that sparks us to be our greatest self.